Happy week to you folks. It is Matt Powell with Pramek Radio. We got a great show coming up on this episode. Got my good friend Jeff Bramstedt, former SEAL, pastor, Hollywood stuntman, and a great teacher. It's a two-part interview. The stories in this alone are absolutely incredible. You're going to be hitting rewind constantly, listening to a lot of the information that he talks about on this episode. It's been a great week for Pramek. People are really excited about organizing the fight. Our last video that came out, you can go over to pramek.com, over to the shop, and you can check it out. It's a CLM-based video. CLM is conceptual learning method, and it's really about organizing the fight, picking your goals, your strategies, your tactics, your methods. It's an hour of really in-depth lecture that any martial artist can use. And it's about 30 minutes of demonstrational lecture as well, where I'm working with a student and demonstrating what we're talking about with a lot of the concepts in the lectures. So make sure you go by pramek.com and check it out. It's on sale right now, and we hope that you very much enjoyed that new video. Now we're going to get over to the interview with Jeff in a minute, but first have a laugh on me. Somebody sent me this insanity. You can actually go over to facebook.com/Pramek Podcast, and you'll see this video. It's got 7 million hits. I don't know how. I've never seen it. It's called Kung Fu Master versus the Cops. And, well, this is for our law enforcement friends out there. So for people that can't see this video, and maybe you can look at it now, it's a guy probably in L.A. in the early 80s. He looks high as a kite. He's in somebody's yard. I'm probably doubting based off of the video that it's his own yard. You never know. And he's dressed in some kind of bizarre, it looks like a kabuki shop or a ninja school, and an Army-Navy store exploded on him, and there was a He-Man Skeletor mask in the back in a bin that, after he was suited up with this incredible outfit that he has on, that the mask kind of fell onto his head, and he went outside and he did a bunch of drugs and decided he was going to stare down the neighborhood. Somebody called the cops, and this is what you get. He decides to fight the police, and the music's great. It's everybody was kung fu fighting, and he stands them down. He draws his nunchucks, and at 19 seconds, it's nunchucks versus pepper ball. And at 19 seconds, you can see he's decided this was a very, very bad idea. I guess he sobered up for a moment and got hit with that first ball and thought about it, drops his nunchucks and says, hey, wait a minute. Then at 21 seconds, he says, okay, that wasn't too bad. It's iron shirt kung fu time. He charges the officers, and one of the poor officers is backpedaling. They're using less than lethal munitions and launchers, and this poor guy ends up falling. This officer falls backwards into a ditch, and the kung fu Wu-Tang, I don't know what he is, Skeletor, drop kicks him, and the officer does this sick deflection on the kick. The guy, it's hilarious to watch with the music and the edits. He jumps out of the ditch, he takes off running, he tries to kick over some cars. They're just filling him full of pepper balls. He's still moving, and finally one of the officers just drops him with a hand to the face. Guy goes down. And you read the comments, and everybody says, oh, they're shooting him. And I always have that rule, don't read the comments, because people had to educate them. They're using less than lethal munitions, don't worry. And they end up with this guy on a gurney, taking him to the ambulance. And it is an absolute laugh. I've probably watched it 8 times, unlike last week's video, which I could only watch twice. In the video the week before, where I can only watch that guy make a fool of himself for one viewing. But this is a hilarious thing. It teaches an important lesson, which is don't do drugs. Don't do drugs in a Skeletor mask with nunchucks. Don't fight the police. And more than likely, don't listen to Wu-Tang Clan if you're on PCP. Now, I met Jeff a few years ago at an undisclosed location, and he walked in the room, and I immediately had an impression. Sometimes you meet those people, and they just walk into a room, and they dominate it. They don't even have to say anything. You just know something's different. Jeff's one of those people that, he can laugh, he can have a good time, and sometimes at my expense, but there was something different about him. And this is somebody that I looked at him and I said, I want to learn what makes him tick. I want to learn his secret. And so we became good friends, and I learned so much from Jeff that we often talk about, shooting and martial arts and combatives and methodologies on Pramek Radio, but we always come back to what makes somebody a good teacher. And that's one of the things that I've learned so much from Jeff over the past few years is how to be a better teacher. His experience, his openness, his forward-looking attitude, his patience and understanding because he's got that experience and he's open about it. But his willingness, as he says, to call someone on their faults. It's one of those things that makes him a great teacher and a great leader, because you have to be willing to do that sometimes. But you also have to have the experience and the openness and the patience and the understanding and the reputation and that it factor to back it up when you do call somebody on their faults to make them a better person. Now, this is a little bit longer than most Pramek Radio episodes. This is a 2-part interview that I'm very excited to bring to you. A lot of great stories, a lot of great information. So without further ado, here is part 1 of my 2-part interview, A Life of Valor, with Jeff Bramstedt. I'm here with Jeff Bramstedt. Jeff, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm really glad to get you on. As I was explaining in the pre-recording of this, that you're somebody that has over the years become a mentor to me and a bit of a role model. You kick me in the proverbial butt when I need it, and I'm really excited to get you on and pick your brain on some things, and also so people can kind of learn about what you're doing and the things that you're working on.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's funny. I remember the first time that I met you, you looked at the belt that I had on. You said, "Is that a rigger's belt?" And I was like, oh, man, this is my lucky belt. But good old.
That's just I had so much time building those. When I was in my former life in the military, I just the guys would complain because the riggers belts that we had just weren't really strong enough. So I made them in a way so that they were double the length of their waist, so it would double wrap their waist, so it would go around and go through the buckle section, which is really just a friction adapter on any parachute system for the leg straps, and then they could take it all the way back around their waist. So if they wanted to wear it over gear, if they wanted to tuck their pants in, which we do a lot of, especially when you're you don't want to be trying to negotiate your cami operator top or whatever to try to get to your pistol, where you tuck your stuff you tuck your shirt into your pants. So I made them differently. I made them stronger, and I bar tacked the crap out of those things, and then I used other things on there. So if they were in a helicopter, they could clip in right away. And so now when I see them out and about, and they had just come out then. This was in the 90s, in the mid and early 90s. And now you go and buy them anywhere. But the reason they're called a rigger's belt is because oftentimes the parachute riggers, which is what I was for my SEAL platoon, the parachute riggers would build them for the operators, and then it just kind of carried out into kind of what today as the operator belt is what they call it now. But it's the term rigger's belt comes from the day when guys like me would sit down at a sewing machine, use some Type 8 webbing, and build a belt that they could hang pistols and knives and they could hang their mag pouches and whatever they had off of it, and it worked so well that the general market actually took it. First guy to actually really put it out there, I think, was Chris Osmond at Tactical Assault Gear. He really started making some really good ones that the team guys started buying, and he was doing that out of his garage, and then it turned into Tactical Assault Gear. So
really?
That's where the term rigger's belt comes from. That's why I asked you, like, is that you're really wearing a rigger's belt? Yeah, that was awesome.
Now, that you brought up something that's interesting, that you said, you sit down with a sewing machine. Sewing, people laugh at me because, I don't sew all my own clothes. I wouldn't look like, Ric Flair if I did. But sewing is one of those skills that it's a lost art that you got to know.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely. Yeah. And when you get issued something in the military, I remember when we were on an operating trip, we were out just doing some KD range work out in 29 stumps, and which is 29 palms. We call it 29 stumps because there's not really any palms there anymore. But we stepped out, we walked out of our barracks, and in typical SEAL team fashion, our uniform consists of probably a Cubs hat, maybe a Woodlands cami top, a desert cami bottoms, and some Merrill boots or some Solomon boots, or something you can buy off a shelf somewhere. And that's our uniform. We're going to the range. We're going to work. And we walk out, and the Marines are about to do a passing review. So there's about every Marine in the world is out on the street, up and down the street. So our vehicles are on the other side. So we got these guys all standing at attention. We're walking through the middle of these guys. And when we got to the other side, they're looking at us like, who the heck are these guys? And why do they look like, they look like someone's sea bag threw up and landed on a variant of them, and REI threw up and landed on the rest of them. But you look at one Marine, and then you look at 500 Marines later, it will look like the same guy, just because their gear was identical, everything was where it needed to be, and they looked absolutely perfect. It was quite a sight. But then we got our gear out, and I was noticing the difference. So we got our gear out, and it looked so vastly different from one guy to the next. A lot of it's because there's only 14 of us in my team, and so from the first guy to the last guy, they're different heights. One guy's left-handed, right-handed. Another guy is he likes his mags up high. Another guy likes his on his belt. Another guy likes his on his chest. Another guy likes his on his leg. And so everything's different. Well, when you get issued something, if it doesn't work for you, it's up to you to make it work for you, which means you will learn how to sew. And if you don't, you better have your best friend and about $20 for a case of beer to be able to get that guy to sew for you. And so, having been a rigger for all three of the platoons that I did, whenever it got time to issue gear, I tried to make myself as scarce as possible, because I knew guys would be like, hey, Bram, can you sew this for me? Hey, can you sew that for me? And so I spent a lot of time not just patching parachutes, which is the main job of a parachute rigger, and sewing, patching parachute systems, or sewing on the actual harness container system of the actual parachute system itself. But then it parlays over into sewing gear and knowing what thread strength to use, knowing where to bar tack. And bar tack is just a really thick, really heavy duty thread, and it only just goes back and forth, and it just goes back. That's all it does, goes back and forth. But it's got a 5,000 pound tensile strength, so you literally can't break it. Tandem parachute systems are bar tacked, or all the major connection points, and they're double and triple and quadruple bar tacked at all four connection points for the student to be attached to the tandem master. So to be able to bar tack things, so the best quality gear that we had is actually one that the parachute rigger actually got a hold of and actually made strong, adjusted, altered to suit the operational needs of the operator.
How many jumps do you have?
I'm coming up on 5,000 now.
And I have 0.
Come on out here. I'll take you up, and we'll go up and break some rules.
I remember you telling me, like, you step out of the plane, there's not even a rush anymore. It's just like, okay, I'm stepping out of the house. Yeah,
exactly. The heart rate doesn't even really go up anymore. And it's a lot of fun, though, when you take somebody who's never done it before, get them up there and get to experience. I did it last week. Actually, a week ago today, I took a good friend of mine. I took his daughter, who turned 23. I took her on her tandem, and just when their first skydive, it's kind of like I remember back to when the first time I was standing on the ramp looking down at 5 in the morning over Yuma, Arizona, looking at the land down there going, I'm 12,500 feet up. I'm standing here looking down, waiting for the slap on the pack tray to jump out of the airplane, wearing a parachute that I packed. I packed it. It was my first jump, and I packed it. So there was a double whammy. And I remember thinking, I'm about to jump out of this airplane. I am dead until I do something about it. So to be able to take that experience to a student, knowing that they feel absolutely safe because they're attached to me, and I have a high sense of self-preservation. They are safe. They are safe by proximity. So it's a really good way to decide if you like skydiving or not is to go out and do a tandem skydive. I encourage everybody to do it. It'll change your life. It'll change the way you look at things for sure.
Now, if you can fill people in on your history, your where you come from, your military history and your background, what you've done.
Sure. I was born in East St. Louis in the ghetto. Nobody knows what hospital I was born in. My birth certificate doesn't even say so. I was abandoned at the hospital. I was put into the foster system in Missouri.
Wow.
And I was adopted by a young nurse and her husband, who's a pastor. And they're both white, and I'm not. I am half black and half Italian. So they moved to a small town east of them, which is called Cuba, Missouri. And that's where I spent my first 3 years. And, my mom would be carrying me around, and, people would look at her and say, I wonder what the pastor's wife's been doing, And then we moved to Wisconsin, that's where I really grew up. I lived there until I was 19 years old before I came into the military. And growing up, I didn't didn't play football unless it was a neighborhood game. My parents didn't let me. They said I would smash something up, break a bone, or get bad knees. And they said, you're going to need those knees when you get older. I didn't really realize then. I was just mad at them for not letting me play football. My parents, were setting me up for something that was going to be, in my opinion, not to disparage football, but in my opinion, greater for me, where I would really ultimately be effective. And they took it. They didn't know what they were setting me up for, but it was really just, it was the hand of God any way you cut it. And I went from where I was angry at them to where I was so happy that they had done that, said, hey, look, these are the 3 things you can do. You can be on you can continue to run on track and field. You can continue to swim, because I had been a competitive swimmer since being a little guy up into high school. And then and you could be on the debate team, which, that wasn't happening because that would entail public speaking, which...
No, you're horrible at that.
That's what I do. So I went from there to I went to chef school for a year after high school. That was unbelievably boring. And then I went to live up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and worked as a security guard on a limestone quarry that was non-functional. And I coached a high school swim team for the first half of their swim season, and then left there and went. My little brother joined the military and said, hey, there's this group of guys in the military, and they do everything we did as kids, only it's legal. And that was exciting for me, because I was like, burn things down, blow things up, and drive fast. Got it. Sign me up. So I enlisted in the Navy, and the sole purpose of going into SEAL teams, even though I didn't know what they were, and that was in 1991. And I had no idea really what I was getting into. There wasn't the big excitement and hoopla and media surrounding the job like there is now. And I was kind of just going up for the adventure and just seeing what happened. I left for boot camp January 16th of 1992, and went into boot camp. My first time flying, got in an airplane. I flew down to Florida, to Orlando, went to boot camp there. Had an eye-opening experience because I learned that my Bobby Brown haircut was not a big hit with the company commanders, and immediately got my head shaved just like everybody else. And that was my first experience. My first military experience was a little interesting, getting screamed at all the time by somebody I didn't know, but my job was to take it, and so I did. and got out of boot camp and went to Corps School to be a hospital corpsman in the Navy. That was before the SEALs had their own rating in the Navy. Now it's called SO. And then I went to out to San Diego, which is where I live now. I haven't left, and I just started doing the working out and training to go into my SEAL training class as I worked at Naval Medical Center in San Diego, teaching basic life support to doctors, which was that was interesting. And went to BUDS. I checked into BUDS January 3rd of 1992, and so I'm off a year. So I joined in 90, and then I left in 91, and then in January 3rd of 92, I went into BUDS, and I graduated August 26th of the same year. Went right through, didn't get rolled, didn't get dropped, and from there I went to jump school, and then I went to the Army course. From the Army, their special forces are called the 18 series. So I went to 18 Delta, which is their Army medical course, and that was about a year long and very intense. And the guys that graduated in my class with the Army, they got their Green Berets, and then I went back to the Navy. So I technically went to Navy SEAL training, and then went to the Army Special Forces, and then back to the Navy. And then when I got there, I checked into SEAL Team 1 and did 3 platoons there as an operator, as a 18 Delta, also a parachute rigger, because then I started getting into the free fall and skydiving stuff, and then did 3 deployments overseas to Southeast Asia. We stationed out of Guam quite a bit. Did some Africa work, did a lot of India work, a lot of JSETs, which is at the time called FID, Foreign Internal Defense, which means you're going teaching the other guys, teaching them how to take care of themselves and fight. And got a little bit of stuff in there here and there. And then after Team 1, I left there and went to, in 98, I went to the special boat teams to cover them medically as they would operate. And then from there, I went to the Navy's professional demonstration skydiving team, which was called the Navy Parachute Team, the Leapfrogs, which is just a demonstration skydiving team. So you travel around the country and jump into NFL games and Major League Baseball and, Boy Scout stuff and air shows and, things like that, high profile events. And had a blast doing that. And then in 2004, into 2003 and into 2004, I got a disease called coccidiomycosis, which basically turned me into a 100-year-old man. It's a spore you get from the ground. It goes into your lungs, and then it goes into your blood, and it makes its way to your bones, and it makes you extremely sore. You have pneumonia, headache, throwing up, nausea, vomiting, all that stuff.
Where did you pick that up at?
You can only get it in the Pacific Southwest. So I don't know where I got it, because even when you're on the jump team, you're still going out and doing some stuff here and there, not operating for real, so to speak, but you're still keeping your skill sets high. At least at the time we were doing that. And we would still go out to the range and shoot. We would still go do training, ship takedowns, a lot of combat swimmer stuff. So I assume I got it either from a drop zone or from crawling around in the dirt somewhere. And they say the darker your skin, the more susceptible you are. I don't know what the accuracy of that is, but I have darker skin, so it definitely hit me, man. It hit hard. And I remember when I got it, I was swimming because I still stayed in the game as far as being a fairly competitive swimmer. But I don't race. I do rough water swims once in a while and some triathlons, but I don't really get out and get up on the blocks and do swim races in a pool, so to speak. But that's where I still go and train quite a bit. I was 1,500 meters into a swim, which is really nothing, and I didn't have the energy. I finally got to the edge of the pool. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, so I need to get home. So I crawled my way to the truck, got in there, pulled into the garage, and just laid on the floor. And my wife came out, and she's a strong girl. She actually picked me out of the truck and carried me up to carried me upstairs to our bed and put me in bed. She said, "What's wrong? What do I got to do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just need a nap." And so I slept for about 2 days, and then I ended up in the ER, and the ER people tried to sort out what was wrong with me. They couldn't really do it either, and then ended up back over at the SEAL team doctors, and they looked at a book, figured out it was coccidiomycosis, and then I ended up in the infectious disease ward at Naval Medical Center. And while I was there, they did the final tests on me to determine what I had, and then I was med boarded out of the military because at the time I couldn't give blood. But, they did say it's either going to kill you, it's going to be a wheelchair the rest of your life, you're going to be, or it'll come back every year. There's that small chance to make 100% recovery. And by the grace of God, I made a 100% recovery and able to carry on with life as normal. So kind of that's my military background. And then since then, I stayed active in the filmmaking industry. I'm a stuntman.
What have you worked in lately?
The last movie I did was Lone Survivor. So I doubled quite a bit of the Taliban guys up on the hill, which that was a mind bend because I had to be able to. I knew those men that died on the hill that day, and some of them in the helicopter. And it was if you haven't seen the movie, it's the story of Operation Red Wings, which is the story of Marcus Luttrell. So it's a great book, great movie. And
now, in making the movie, do you feel like, a lot of times, for example, last night I was watching something on Netflix, and you see the cop, and he's holding his wrist while he's holding the gun, or his pistol, and you're looking at it, and you're like, this is horrible. Do you feel like it was a really good representation technically of the general training skills and so forth? Nobody's going to look at the movie and be like, and just say, "Oh, this is horrible." I didn't. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very sound.
No, it's about as accurate as it's going to get as far as the technical side of it goes. The actors, Mark Wahlberg, Taylor Kitsch, Emil Hirsch, and Ben Foster spent a lot of time with a Navy SEAL cadre learning how to do the stuff that we do. They're doing our drills. They were, and by the time they were done with their, 2-week, 3-week long training session, they were talking like team guys. They were acting like team guys. It was pretty cool. And they got really into it. In fact, if you were to see any of their interviews, you'll hear them actually say that this was probably the most important role that I've ever played, because I got to look into the world of these guys and see how they live and how they work and why they are the way they are. And so the action sequences, the way that they're holding their weapons, the way that they're firing their weapons, it's not because they're acting and there's somebody standing over them going, "Hey, get your finger on the trigger this way, and make sure that you do this with your thumb. Make sure that you change your magazine this way." No, they had 2 weeks, 3 weeks of doing that every day, all day for 12 hours, enough to where it actually became muscle memory for them. So they're not really acting at that point. They're really just reacting. They're really just they're responding to their training, and it's coming across screen very well. So
now, once you
but to answer your question, some of the other ones where I did Men of Honor. I doubled Cuba Gooding Jr. in Men of Honor. Getting drugged by that submarine. I did some other technical advising stuff and taught some of the guys in Charlie Wilson's War. Taught the Afghani freedom fighters how to fire a Stinger missile. Let's see, I was in Iron Man, Transformers, Hancock, Savages. Got my head blown off in Savages towards the end, right after I shot Taylor Kitsch, which was awesome. But then the next movie I did was Lone Survivor. I went to him like, "Hey, dude, remember me?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "I shot you in Savages." He's like, "Oh, that's right. That's right. I have a feeling I'm going to shoot you again on this one." So it was really cool. It's great. Yeah, Lone Survivors are great cast of guys. They're very approachable. They really just kind of worked into the team. We had relaxed grooming standards. There's nobody on that set that was sitting in a chair. Everybody, if you wanted to sit down, you were sitting on a log or a stump of the ground. Everybody had beards. It was just, and it was like being back in the SEAL platoon, literally being on that film.
Now, you've gone on to form an organization, Life of Valor. I am a gigantic fan of the programs and your sermons. And if you could tell everybody a little bit, what is Life of Valor and how can they utilize it in the things that they do on their daily lives?
Mm-hmm. Well, Life of Valor is a faith-based men's organization. It is. It's about 2.5 years old now, and we have what's called the Life of Valor Men's Conference Series. So if you remember back several years, back to the mid and early 90s, there was an organization called Promise Keepers, which is still alive today, a great organization. They do great things. This is kind of along the lines of Promise Keepers, except for our men's conferences are a little different. They're very SEAL-centric. We take a lot of the things that we learn in the SEAL community, and even some of the stuff that's more foundational, things that are like what we have what's called the SEAL ethos, which is kind of like a code. It's a code by which you live, is an ethos. Well, I've taken the code of the ethos, the SEAL code, and I've broken it down into about 15 different small little segments. It's like I train to fight and I fight to win. I am my brother's keeper. I will never quit. I am never out of the fight. Those key little phrases right there are all things that men need to learn. Because if you look at men as a whole over time, we have really begun to almost give away our masculinity. And you can see it when you look at a commercial. You'll see how the guy's the idiot sitting on a couch trying to figure out how to get the remote to work. Mama walks around the corner carrying a 3-year-old and she could tell she's making dinner, comes around, snatches the remote out of his hand, fixes the cable, gives it back to him, and all he had to say is, "Oh, great."
Such foolishness.
And she goes back to, and so you see that over and over and over in commercials, and it's nothing against women. I'm married to an awesome one. I was raised by an awesome one. I get it. But there is something about men that men are supposed to do that men aren't doing. And people can argue with me and say, well, it's time for women to step up and get theirs. Okay, that's fine. I am not a chauvinist. That's not what this is about. This is just about, there's a reason why our prison systems are loaded down right now. There's a reason why the crime rate is the way that it is. There's a reason why pornography is so prevalent right now. It's because men are giving away what they are supposed to be passing on to their children, and they're giving it away in such a way that they're beginning to reside in selfishness. Just, guys are just, we've really kind of, quite frankly, become almost complacent in our raising of our kids. And if you were to ask any of those men in jail cells, and I've done this a lot, and you ask them and say, "Tell me about your dad," you're going to get one of a few answers. You're going to get, "I hate my dad. I never knew my dad. My dad was there, but he wasn't there." I did, and you'll see them as they begin to answer. You're going to see the hurt and the resentment towards their father start to come up. They've never been taught how to be a real man. A man of God. That's exactly what this is. That's what Life of Valor is about. So our conferences do that on a large scale. So we'll have SEALs up front talking about their stories, telling about how they grew up, and talking about the things that they learned in the SEAL teams that brought them to where they are. Not to say that SEALs have it all together, but the guys we have as speakers are figuring it out. I'm figuring it out. You're figuring it out. None of us have it all together. But if we're always striving to get there, then that means that you're doing something right.
So you're using these conferences. You're using the conferences to educate them on this, because you said they're giving away the things that they should pass on to their kids. What are some of those things?
Well, they're giving away. One of the things, like I really just do everything I can to focus on my kids. I have three kids. My daughter's 9, and I have a 10 and 12-year-old boy. My daughter has cerebral palsy. She's delayed learning, and in my eyes, she's about as perfect as it gets. So, my boys, I really focus on teaching my boys how to be the right kind of man that when they grow up, their wife is going to look at them and say, that is the man that I married. That is a man that the focus of my attention. That man is everything that I could have ever dreamed of. And I want their kids to look at them and say, I want to be like my dad, and I want to marry a man, or I want to marry a man like my dad. And I'll say to my kids every day, I'm like, what is character? Every day. And they have it recited, they have it down, and they say character, it's the place inside of you where the things you say, the things you do, and the decisions you make come from. And so one of the things that men are giving away is they're really giving away their character. They're giving away their integrity. And character, really, quite frankly, in a dumbed-down version, means what you do in private is the same thing that you do when you're in public. You're not two different people. There's no dichotomy to you. You are the same. No matter where you are and what you're doing, you're the same. You're going to make a decision inside of them. You're going to make an ethical decision. You're going to make a godly decision. You're going to make a decision that is aligned with who God has intended and designed you to be. That is what men are beginning to give away. And you can see that in the fact that the porn industry is making 11,000 movies for every 400 movies that Hollywood makes. Now,
that's an incredible statistic.
People say, well, why is porn bad? Well, porn is bad because you are trading what you're supposed to be sharing with your wife with somebody on the other side of a computer screen who, quite frankly, asked for you can have. Whatever you ask for, blonde or hair color or body type or body shape, or you can have that, and then you're sitting there and you're fantasizing in your mind, creating neural pathways that steer away from the kind of relationship that you're supposed to have with your wife. Now,
well, even the endorphin, even the chemical side of it is getting confused by it. You're not feeling it towards your wife or your girlfriend or whatever it is. You're feeling it. You can't replace that. You only get it at one spot.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
I say that because most people don't know. In a previous life, I was director of corporate security, and I was actually director of corporate security for an adult company for 3 years. And I can tell you personally, being in that, I took the job because I was trying to climb the ladder, and I was at a point where the larger companies wouldn't hire me, but the smaller companies would. But the smaller companies weren't offering anything, and I found a company. It was a distribution company. It wasn't like they were making the movies or something. It was a distribution company for videos and things like that. And most people don't know this, but for 3 years, and I mean, we had a lot of death threats, a lot of bomb threats, a lot of robberies, a lot of things happen. But you could see what it actually does to people, where they get that rush in one spot, and then they're chasing. It's like being on drugs. They're chasing that high, and they go to a higher and higher and higher level of perversity in what they're visually seeing to get that endorphin rush, to get that. Right. And then eventually they end up doing things that they would never do, meeting strangers, getting on the internet, doing crazy things, because they can't get that high at home.
That's right. That's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head so square. And if you were to interview someone like, say, some of the serial murderers, there was one guy, I believe it was Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy, one of those guys. I get the names. The name escapes me which one it was, but he was walking down the alley at 9 years old, and there was a dumpster laying open. There was a bunch of magazines. He went over, and he saw that it was a porn magazine. He began to flip through it, and he said that he can trace everything that he's done all the way back to that moment, where it went from the porn, and then it went to wanting to see it in person, and then it went to acting it out, and then that became not enough. The endorphin rush was not enough because and I can get into the science of it, but I'd rather not. But it became not enough, and so he had to reach deeper and reach deeper and reach deeper. Before you know it, he's collecting women, he's murdering them, or he's raping them and then murdering them, and that's where he would get his ultimate rush. And it became
it became it became Ted Bundy. Now, one of the things that I always like to, and we'll definitely talk a lot about Life of Valor, but one of the things that I like to dig into is methodologies, training methodologies, operational methodologies, things that people can that they can take and use in their daily lives. And so when you look at your experience in the teams, you know, what are 3 key things to training that you think somebody can walk down the street and hear this on their iPhone or whatever it is, things that they can take home right now that you learned in the teams when it comes to training or discipline or thought processes? 3 things you would say that somebody could use.
Wow. Well, for starters, there's hundreds of those, and each one has its place. But to pull 3, let's see. I think one of them is preparedness, always being ready, and that's in your headspace, and that's physically as well. You know, and preparedness really is just, you know, learning to always be ready for the battle, regardless of what the battle may be, and understanding that your training is never complete, and that when you train for whatever it is that you're training so that when you're in the situation, you come out with your life intact, you come out with your family's life intact. You know, that's ultimately what it's about if you were to take it and apply it to a civilian side of things, you know. But when you're out doing the SEAL stuff, you're training so that you fight to win, because, you know, it sounds sacrilegious to say it this way, but, you know, when you're in it, it's not about God, country, and politics at that point. You know, hopefully you have God in your life, and He knows your heart. He knows where you're at. He gets it. Now, you know, you're in the fight. You're fighting to win, because when I fire my weapon, I'm firing it for the guy to my right and my left, not necessarily for my own sake. You know, my job is to make sure these guys to my right and my left come home. Their job is to make sure that I come home. Okay, so that I think is preparedness. So that means that you get out and you make sure your fitness level is on point. You make sure that you are still training and you're at the range. People always think that when SEALs go out and they fight, they come back and they go back to their bat cave, hang upside down, and wait for the bat signal to go up so they go and smack down evil. You know, it's not the case. They come back and they go right back to training. You know, the guy who wins Wimbledon is not the guy with the great, awesome between the legs shot. It's the guy who stands there every day and does the forearm swing every day.
It's got that consistent volley.
He sits there and he's putting rounds right where they need to be, and he's going through the mechanics over and over with his right hand, with his left hand, with using different fingers for the trigger finger. Because what if you lose a finger? It's pretty possible in a gunfight you get your finger shot off, because if you're going up against a guy who knows what he's doing, he's going to be looking at what you're shooting. You're going to be looking at what he's shooting. If you shoot a lot, your rounds impact where your eyes are going. I'm looking at his gun. You know, if he's looking at mine, I'm probably going to lose some fingers.
We find that in simunitions all the time. Everybody comes out with hand hits constant.
Yep, exactly. That's because you know what you're doing, and you've been doing it long enough that you don't necessarily have to aim your weapon. You are literally just firing, but those rounds are going to impact where they need to be, and that is going to be center mass, and that guy's weapon is probably center mass if he's firing back, right? So I think it's preparedness, understanding the basics and most fundamental basics of everything, so that when it gets down to it, you can still land rounds that need to be. When you're standing on one foot, leaning over to the left, leaning over to the right, shooting with your left hand when you're right-handed, or shooting with your right hand when you're left-handed, you got to shoot around a corner, and you're not in your perfect shooting stance. Well, your rounds are still going to impact where they need to be because the mechanics are there. So that's preparedness. And a lot of times when I get out and do a lot of courses, people always get on me, and they're just like, why are you making us work so hard? Why are you making us run and get out of breath and everything else? And I always tell people, I'm like, if your fitness level isn't there, that means that you're not getting the oxygen flow to your brain. And if you're not getting oxygen flow to your brain, even the things that you have trained for years and years and years to do may escape you. So people say, well, it's not the strongest guy that wins the fight. It's not the most in shape guy that wins the fight. It's the guy who's the smartest. Well, I'll tell you what, having a good fitness level sure does help.
You got to process all that oxygen in the brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if your brain doesn't know how to work in oxygen deficiency, you're going to have a problem. So, if you're carrying around a few extra lbs, time to get rid of them. And it's not one of those things where you got to like, oh, I like my Big Macs. Okay, well, instead of having 2 Big Macs, have 1. Baby steps, baby. So I think another thing is it's learn how to press through in excellence. Everything you do to the best of your ability. Do in excellence. You need to abandon mediocrity in everything. And I always tell the kids that I mentor who end up in the SEAL teams, I give them 5 rules, and one of those rules is change your routine. And it sounds very like, well, it doesn't make sense, but I say when you get up in the morning, excellence. All right, but before, routine for you is mediocrity. Routine now needs to be excellence. That means you get out of bed, first thing you do is the first thing you do. He's like, go get food. I'm like, no. From now on, the first thing you do is you make your bed. That way, when you go on with the rest of your day, say you screw everything else up, you started off your day in excellence. You made your bed, you made it well. Clean up your room next. Everything needs to go back in its place. Then put somebody else before you. Go out and ask Mom, hey, Mom, everything okay? Anything I can do for you? Do I need to go out and get the paper? Do I need to take out the garbage? Do I need to walk the dog? Do I need to make you breakfast? What can I do for you? Well, I'm good. Okay. Ask your wife, what can I do for you to make the start of your day perfect? That's called loving your wife. Yeah. If you haven't done that, then start doing that. That's step beyond excellence. That's just everyday stuff. In the SEAL team, you have to do things with excellence, otherwise your job could go away. Because people don't want to be around the guy who, in their everyday life, survival could be a struggle. If you're not doing things in excellence and your life could be on the line, people aren't going to want to be around that guy. So excellence in everything that you do. And then probably the third thing I would think is probably in thinking while I'm talking about these other 2 things, I would probably say self-control. Controlling your mind and your emotions in everything that you do. They say that, what happens in your mind is going to happen in time. So control your thought life. You have that urge. We were talking about porn earlier. Some people have that urge to go to porn at 1 in the morning. They wake up and like, oh, I haven't got my porn fix. Sometimes it's just self-control, denying your flesh something that it needs to have, that it feels it needs to have. Sometimes just deny it every time. Just deny it and say, you know what, not today. I always like that. Not today, Satan. One of my favorite movie of all time is Tombstone. And when they just got in that gunfight in the OK Corral, and they go back, and the sheriff goes, "Yeah, it's great. You say you won the gunfight. Now I need your guns because this is a non-gun town." And he said, he goes, "Or I'm gonna have to arrest you." And Wyatt Earp says, "You know what? I don't think I'm gonna let you arrest us today, Behan." Just sometimes saying, I'm not gonna fall to that. There's no way that's happening. Not today. Not ever again. I'm changing my mind.
I think a lot of times we think of fasting in the dietary and physical sense, but it's almost like mental fasting.
Self-control is definitely an art, and some people get angry over everything. Sometimes you just got to choose your battle. You know what? That's not one worth fighting right now, because that can't end well, not for anybody. So why respond that way? Self-control in your actions could be, I want to lash out at somebody, at something, because I've been wrong. The perfect example of that is road rage. Yeah. I live in Southern California, the home of road rage. Everybody's in a hurry to get somewhere. Like, relax, and, I get that urge every once in a while. I'm still somewhat of an angry man once in a while myself. And I even got to tell myself, hey, it's some dude in a car. Don't worry about it. Let that one go. He cuts you off. So what? You know what? You don't know his story. He could have a wife in labor right now, So sometimes you don't know the whole story, so realizing is a big point of self-control.
All right, and we're going to come back with a rapid-fire session with Jeff Bramstedt after this music break. right, we are back with Jeff Bramstedt. So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you some questions here. Give me the quick off the top of your head answer. And this is something I've always wondered. What's on your playlist in your iPad or your iPod?
Oh, playlist. Oh, let's see. There'll be Pillar. There'll be Linkin Park. There'll be some Alicia Keys. Probably some Eminem. Hey, don't judge me. Don't judge me.
Alicia Keys.
3 Days Grace. Got to have some Charlie Daniels band, some Steve Miller band. Let's see. There'll be Stevie Wonder, Billy Joel. Then some Paco Bell. Maybe some Chopin.
Did you say Paco Bell?
How about that? Paco Bell. Yeah. Canon and D. Mm-hmm. And but mostly it's 80s hair bands. I gotta say.
I can see you if you say Striper. I might have to cut the cut the mic here. Like White Snake and Motley Crue, Poison, stuff like that. It's just TNT, bands like that. 80s hair band. Have you ever?
I know, but
now, next question: have you ever met a president?
Yes.
Who'd you meet?
George W. we were jumping into the Army Navy game in Philadelphia at the old Vet Stadium, and he came down and just came and spent some time hanging out with my team. The SEAL team I was with at the time was the Navy parachute team. So yeah.
Favorite shoes for operational side or for running? I know you're a triathlete. Favorite shoes that you like?
My running shoes of choice are Newtons, and operationally my favorite shoe is a Salomon boot. I have two models. I have the heavier winter ones, and then I have the lighter ones. That they look pretty much just like hikers, but they serve the purpose perfectly.
Top 3 favorite movies.
Top 3 favorite movies. Let's see. I would have to say Lone Survivor, Tombstone, and let's see, probably Gladiator.
So no Steel Magnolias.
No Steel Magnolias. No. Bridges of Madison County didn't make the list either. You have another one that's really obscure that you may not have ever. You got to check it out. It's called Hammer of the Gods.
Oh, that is a great film. I actually watched that about a month ago. Somebody was telling me I had to watch it. Incredible film.
Yeah. Love that one. Yeah, just absolute, just sword swinging, guts falling all over the place. It's awesome.
Now, favorite car, which should be interesting because of your driving and stunt work.
Yeah, favorite car. I'd have to say a 1971 Barracuda or a 1970 GTO Judge. I'm a muscle car guy. But for stunt work, one of my favorite cars to actually, slide around, I did a Porsche commercial. That was pretty fun. So it was a Carrera 4S is what that one was. And that one was a lot of fun to drive. And another car you can do just about anything with is a Mini Cooper. Although I'm not a huge Mini Cooper fan, but that's a fun car to drive when you have one that's tricked out and has all the bells and whistles on it, be able to slide it around. And you can drive those things downstairs. You can drive them upstairs. You can drive them pretty much. And and when you're done with it, you can put it on your desk and use it as a paperweight. It's pretty cool.
You can put it in the back of somebody's truck. You can move it down the street. Now, are you more of a weights person or a body weight person when it comes to working out?
I'm more of a body weight person. I haven't been into it religiously in a gym for probably about 7 years or so. And the reason for that is just, I'm 43 years old now. I've managed to make it this far without breaking a major bone, having a surgery, or even spending a night in the hospital, even despite my the illness that I had. I never spent a night in the hospital. And I like to keep it that way. I like to, I've had a lot of hard parachute landings. I've had, jumping out of moving vehicles and, I had my head, Will Smith in handcuffs, smashed my head into a wall and then picked me up by my face and threw me up into a ceiling. I did that pretty much all day, And, the only reason I haven't really smashed anything up major, any major issues, really, quite frankly, is just because of the way I train. I do a lot of stuff on a big, huge, those big exercise balls. I even do squats standing on that. I'll do, I train a lot unstable, so that when I get in unstable environments, I am still able to, my body knows how to react to keep myself upright on my feet and functional. I do a lot of pull-ups. Every day, minus 1 day a week, I do 10 sets of 10 pull-ups every day. I got pull-up bars all over my house.
I'm the same way. It's all in the door frames. When I go in a room, out of a room, gotta hit my pull-ups.
Yep. I'm the same way. Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge body weight fan. We've a guy named Eric Melland, ESIC. He's got this program called Warrior Mode. We actually sell it on our site. It's all body weight exercise, and it's all about stabilization, and it's not about big muscle strong, but tendons and ligaments and stabilization. And I've always been a big fan of the body weights. Now, favorite pistol.
Hold on, let's go back to that for a second.
Okay.
There's one thing I will not do. Absolutely will not do. My wife is a big yoga fan. I'm 5'8" and 200 pounds, so there's a lot to me. For how small I am. I'm still a fairly thick fella. So when there's some of these poses that they get in, like my legs do not wrap around each other like 5 and 6 times like these guys do at yoga. But I'll go in there and give it a shot because she's like, I want to go do yoga. Will you come with me? I'm like, of course, because I want to hang out with my wife because she's hot. So I'll go and do that. Well, for other reasons, but she's kind of fun to watch when she's doing yoga, I got to say, So when she's doing her yoga thing and I'm trying to just mimic what she's doing, what the instructor's doing, and then I always get the attention. I always get called out. But one thing, so I'll do that. But that Bikram yoga, that hot stuff, where the room is like 900 degrees, and then you're in there and you're for an hour and a half doing all the same. Yeah, negative Ghost Rider. That pattern is full. Not doing it.
I have done that one time. It was horrible.
Like 3 days to recover just to get. I was peeing powder for like 2 days after that. Just still trying to just get hydrated. It was horrible. Won't do it.
I did that one time. I was dating a girl. You got to go to hot yoga with me, and I'm thinking, I can manage this. I literally wanted to die. I just sat there. At a certain point, I just kind of I wouldn't allow myself to quit, but I only got through it due to the anger I had that I had been talked into this without YouTubing it and going, this isn't going to work.
Exactly. And if you're doing hot yoga, one word, all you got to remember is one word, and that word is savasana. And that is laying on your back, staring at the ceiling. That's that's the savasana pose. So they're all their stuff. I'm on my back, just staring at the ceiling. And they're like, would you like to join us? I'm like, I just put my hand up. Nope, I'm good. I'm good down here.
Getting my savasana.
Savasana.
So,
are you still dating that girl?
Oh no.
Are you dating now?
I am dating around.
Okay, so let me do this. Ladies, listen to me. Right? I am right now the love doctor. I'm telling you. Matt is a handsome man. He's in shape. The dude can shoot. He can move. He can communicate. Those are very, very important things in a relationship, whether you think it or not. It's actually that's not. But he can do all the things and more. He is handsome. He is a go-getter. He is aggressive. And if you were to spend just 5 minutes with him, you will see that I am right. And then you can email me, hit me up on Facebook. It's Jeff Bramstedt on Facebook. Just go ahead, Jeff J. Bramstedt. Go in there, just tell me, hey, you were right. Matt's handsome, and I want to date him. And then you give me your phone number. I will move it over to Matt, and I will connect you guys up, and you will thank me for the rest of your life.
Are you gonna chaperone the first date?
I can do that. I'm a horrible chaperone because I'm always like encouraging things that you probably shouldn't do on a first date. Like, let's see, I can't think of one right now, but
Matt, do all those shots, Matt. Do all those shots. Keep going. That's a great idea for this date, Matt.
I'm not a big drinker. You might be doing that one on your own, but, I do like a beer here and there as long as it's got fruit in it. And people like pick on me like, oh, what do you have an orange in your beer for? Because it's a wheat beer, you put orange in it. I'm not too worried about your opinion of me and my beer right now. I do like, but anyway, we digress.
I put lemons in my when I drink like PBR. I always put lemons in it. I do the same type of thing because it's like I like beer, but I don't like it that much. So if I'm going to drink it, I might as well have some flavoring to it.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same. Yep. Same way. I'm with you.
Well, ladies, make sure you let Jeff know that, if...
Let me know. Call me. You hit me up on Facebook. I will move you straight to him. I will. Like you can't get a hold of him yourself. He's not hard to find. But if you're too embarrassed, you want somebody to introduce you, I'll call you first. I'll get your basics. I'll get your information down. Then I'll call him and I'll just tell, hey, my friend Shaniqua wants to meet you, Matt, and she's awesome. She's awesome. I've known her for years, 5 minutes. I've known her for years and years and years, 5 minutes. And you guys will get along great.
She's never been to prison. She's never stabbed anybody on a date.
Yep.
She
got tattoos, and hey, tattoos on chicks is cool.
Hey, I'm down with that. So
just saying.
So favorite pistol, favorite rifle.
Favorite pistol, I would have to say the Sig Sauer P226, the Sig 45 from Molon Labe, and a Glock 22. Those are my favorite guns I have. And I have a few. And those are my three favorite pistols. My favorite M4 would probably be from the Battle Rifle Company, and it's called the Manikel. They also make one called the BR4 Spartan, and it's amazing, especially if you get it with all the nickel boron guts and barrel and everything else. I got a buddy of mine who has 120,000 rounds through one without a malfunction. That's a war tool right there.
120,000.
I actually just got one, and I go and pick it up tomorrow or the next day. I'm going to pick it up at the gun shop. They sent it out to me, and they just sent it out because I guess they like me. And but I have a lot of rounds through a Battle Rifle Company M4 platform, and it is stellar, absolutely stellar. And you can get it in 300 blackout, you can get it in 308, you can get it in 556. It's awesome. I suggest you go get one.
What's their website? Do you know?
It's battleriflecompany.com.
All right, well, go ahead and look that up. Now we're going to take a quick break and come back, and we're going to talk about faith with Jeff Bramstedt of Life of Valor. So much information in this. It's absolutely incredible. And just want to remind you, make sure you go by Pramek.com, check out the shop, and also join our newsletter. You'll go to the site and it's going to pop up a little pop-up. Make sure you join the newsletter. We send out a lot of great information every week. We announce who's on the podcast, but we also send out a lot of great videos, a lot of great articles. So make sure you join the newsletter, and you also get 25% off with our super secret coupon off of all our products in the shop when you do join the newsletter. So let's get back to this incredible interview, part 2, A Life of Valor with Jeff Bramstedt.
I call upon my demons as I call upon my saints. I lend an equal ear to each, and I suffer no complaints. When the furies be your ushers and the shadows be your guide, the best way out of hell is through the other side.
And we are back with Jeff Bramstedt. Now, Jeff, one of the interesting things is, I know that obviously with your organization, faith is a big part of your life, and I went through my years where faith wasn't a important part of my life. I think as we get older, I was out with a friend of mine the other night. We were talking about how as we get older, faith starts to become more important. You feel that draw back to your faith and to God.
And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on is to talk about faith and, to talk about times when you've needed your faith most, and, what happened in your life where you needed it and you were able to call upon it. Maybe you had a break and then you kind of came back to it for some reason, and just talk about it a little bit.
I grew up in a Christian home, and it like most, I don't say most, but at least me, when I joined the military and got into the SEAL teams, I found myself in an environment where, faith wasn't really, it really wasn't the vogue thing. It was very looked down on. In fact, it was oftentimes taken as weakness. And, the Bible is pretty clear about, faith when it comes down to a fighting man. And many times people will always misconstrue what Scripture actually says about someone who is in a military role. And I'll always see it on comments on YouTube or comments online where people are saying, well, how can you go out and just murder people and just do that? Well, and they say, well, one of the 10 Commandments says, that thou shalt not murder. Okay, well, I get that. So don't go out and murder people. However, if someone has their weapon up and they're trying to kill me or my friends, that's not murder. That's war, and war is ugly. It just is, And I don't know that firsthand. Like many of these kids nowadays that are in the SEAL teams, they're out there and they're in it every day. Now, I was in the teams in the 90s and early 2000s when there wasn't really a whole lot going on in the area of war. Then it was more sneak and peek, get out. Let's try to mitigate a problem coming up in the future. These kids now, they are either really strong believers or they're really not. In fact, they go the other direction. And I think there comes a time in every man's life where, whether you're a war fighter or not, you are a warrior. Because there are things that are going to come up in a man's life where he's going to have to decide, is this something worth fighting for? And if there's something worth fighting for, it's worth dying for. This country is one of them. The men you're in it with are one of them. The things that happen in and amongst, relationships and stuff, sometimes you have to fight to keep a relationship alive and keep it healthy and keep it strong. And it's not easy, But in military setting, I remember when I came face to face with the decision of the final condition of my soul. And I had come back from a deployment, and it was not exactly a pretty deployment. There was a lot of, that was back in my debauchery days. And, it was a crazy, crazy time for me. And when I came home, I remember just, feeling like, the world around me was just caving in. And I had done some pretty cool stuff on that deployment. There was a situation where, I had to save one of the guys in my SEAL platoon who, by the time I got to him, it was just a training accident even. And he was dead by the time I got to him, and it was in the water. And I always tell people it was one of these things where I was actually tied to a dead guy plummeting to the floor of the ocean in a area of the ocean where they had not yet found the bottom. It sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like stuff that you dream about, but it actually happened to me. And I remember coming home there was a string of deployments, they're all back to back. And I came home from the third one, and I was just wore out. And I was like, you know what, God, there's no way you could be real, because I was asking the question that everybody asks. And the question is, if there's a God, how could he let this happen? Or how could he let that happen? Or how could he let these children starve to death? Or how could he let this country be so defiled by its corrupt government? How could God let bad things happen to good people? That is the most common question, and it's the one that people lean on because they don't have the understanding of how God works in tough situations. And the answer is, God doesn't do evil. He's not capable of doing evil. And God's capable of anything, but he does not do evil. He will not do evil. It is against everything that is quote unquote God to do things that are evil. Now, if you take that on and say, okay, now God, if you're not going to do evil, then why does evil happen? It's because we live in a fallen world where the enemy has taken a stronghold, has taken a stance, has grabbed a hold of you could take any area, and the enemy has grabbed a hold of it and try to drag it down to his level when it's something that God created to be great, like a marriage, like anything that God had set in motion. When you have these types of things happening, where the enemy is taking hold of something, how is he going to do it? Well, for everything that God creates, the enemy creates a counterfeit. Now, I'm going to just so we can stay in a common thread, I'm going to go back to one thing we've already been talking about is say pornography. It's the exact same thing. God created sex in the marriage. The enemy, he has pornography, and they're both doors that you can walk through. You got to choose which one you're going to walk through, because if you go through the God door, it may not look it may look awesome at first, and as you get going, the sex isn't so great, but you have to work at making things awesome, walking in excellence in your marriage. When you have the stuff on the other side, where you walk through the door that the enemy has created, he is going to lie to you, and he is going to say, this is the most awesome thing. You walk through that door, you're going to find nothing but heartbreak. You're going to find venereal diseases. You're going to find things that the devil wants to use to try to drag you down. So I was up against all of that and more, and I'm sitting there looking at this blank wall going, okay, God, if you're real, then do something. Well, I had to come to this realization. I knew who God was. I did not understand warfare in that sense, that the enemy wants to drag me down. And so when I came to the realization that there was an enemy, which means that now there's evil, and there is good, and there is a God, that the two are going to be constantly conflicting, and the one battlefield they are constantly fighting over is the battlefield of my heart. So when that happens, and that comes to, when I realize that, now I get it. So there was a time where then I was at a gym, I was working out, and this guy came up to me, and he just began to just speak life into my life. And my workout partner ended up giving this guy my phone number. He called me incessantly over the course of the next year. I'd be having a party at my house, the phone rang, I'd be, hello. He'd say, hey, it's Pastor Greg. How can I, are you okay? How can you, and I'd be, and some like hot chick would be walk by, like, here, the phone's for you. I'd walk off. I'd come back an hour later. She's still on the phone with that guy, and she's crying, and then she hangs up the phone. She's like, I'm going to go. It's been great. Hey, thanks for having me at the party. And I'm like, what happened to you? She called me the next day, and she's like, I gave my heart to Jesus. I'm not living like that anymore. I'm like, what is going on around here? And so
this guy's killing my game.
Over the course of the next year, my life got hard enough because God allowed. He doesn't do evil, but sometimes he'll allow it to happen so that you can come to that place where you make the decision on your own to follow him. And he's never going to put something in front of you that you can't handle. So even though it looks like it's horrible, everything else, he still knows that you have it in you to handle, to be able to handle it. And he's going to give you the tools to be able to do it if you go ahead and submit to the way that you have been living to him and begin to follow him. Now, you apply that to a war fighter, and now you don't have a guy who's out there just beating his drum, thinking he's all cool, thinking that he's got it all together, thinking he's the best shooter, best diver, best skydiver, best whatever that it takes in any given area of operations. But inside, the guy's about as insecure as it gets. Now you have a guy who's secure. He knows who he is. He knows what he's capable of. And on top of that, he has godly wisdom on top of it, knowing that God is going to guide his hand, guide his actions in interpersonal relationships, in combat action, in interaction with your authorities, in interaction with your subordinates, in interaction with your wife, with your kids, with everything. Now all of a sudden, everything changes. And people are going to begin to view that person, and I've experienced this, as somebody who is solid in what they do. And it's not going to be viewed as weakness. In fact, it's going to be the other way around, especially if you don't talk about it all the time. I tell people that I want a believer now, I got to go ahead and run my mouth all the time. No, I don't. In fact, Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. In other words, if you go ahead and run your mouth all the time, I don't care how solid you are, everybody's going to be looking for you to make a mistake. And as soon as you do, you've just discredited everything that you stand for. And it's going to be harder to reach anybody. So live it. Don't speak it. And so that is how, faith in the military works best. And that's what I have found to be the absolute in truth, is that somebody who is a believer and they're walking it out, not just talking it out, they're walking it out, is somebody that the other guy's going to come to and say, what is different about you? Because you're a good operator. You have an amazing family. You have your stuff together. You're that guy that if we get in trouble, if I look over and see you, I know that we're going to be okay. What is it about you? The next few moments are very, very important for both those guys or girls or whoever they happen to be talking, because how is it going to be communicated? So that is what I oftentimes, and if you want, I'm not going to dwell on it much longer. If you want more, go ahead and hit me up on Facebook. I'll get into it with you, or I'll post about it. But that is, if you have, faith in the military, how it has affected me, how it affects me even today operationally and in my heart, in my life, with my family, everything else. That's where it's that to me is where it's at.
One of the things that I talk to people about Life of Valor and tell them about the program and send them over to the website, that people, there's always this strange line where people say, well, military undertones, they don't really relate to religious or spiritual disciplines. It's not really the same thing. And, it's not a good opinion or a bad opinion. It's just an opinion. But what are your thoughts on that? Because as people look at the Life Valor website, they look at the YouTube, they hear the message and so forth. There is a lot of, because it's what you know, and because of that, warrior ethos and the ethic there, that there is a lot of military undertones to what you talk about. How do you bridge that gap between the faith side of talking about these things and then the actionable military side of describing them and talking about them in those terms?
Well, Exodus 15:3 says, "The Lord is a warrior, and the Lord is His name." He's a warrior on our behalf. Constantly covering the things that we're doing. He's in the things, hopefully, the things, and that's a choice we get to make. He's in the things that we're saying, and He is behind my style of communication, be it from the pulpit, in front of a church, in front of a men's group, in front of a conference, be it in front of 5 people or in front of 55,000 people. I am who I am. I am a military man. I am a warrior. I am a man of God. I am all these things. Well, I'm going to communicate outward from my life's experience, which many of them are military. And there are so many things that men in general can learn from the military lifestyle, whether they have been in the military or not. Maybe they've forgotten what it was like to be in the military. But the way that I like to communicate it and relate it to, because every man out there has a warrior in them, and they oftentimes forget that. And what I've taken on is my job, what God has called me to be and placed me in motion to be, is to call out the warrior in men. And I'm not talking about in the physical sense, like, take up arms and get on the street. No, that's not it. I'm talking about a warrior in the sense of you need to fight for your kids. You need to fight for your marriage. You need to fight for the relationships that you need to keep. And you need to be able to be aware of the relationships that you don't need to be. And sometimes it's going to take courage and strength to be able to get rid of the relationships that you don't need to have. So in other words, I'll get in front of guys and I'll say it. I speak very clear, very frank, and right down the middle. And sometimes, I gotta, kind of hit them in the head with stuff, that they didn't see coming. But I'll actually say to them, maybe it's time for you to stop having sex with the person you're having sex with. Maybe it's time for you to stop doing the things that you're doing, because There's something else that God has for you. And if you're hauling around that garbage, you're being limited in what God has for you. And what God has for you is greater than what you have for you. And that sometimes needs to be conveyed in a way that men will understand. And I mean the majority of men understand when you come from a warrior perspective and you're talking to them. It hits them in a way which maybe they don't get on Sunday, or maybe they don't get when they're talking with their buddies, or they're in their men's group, or they're in their little life groups, their small group Bible studies, or things like that. But all of a sudden, a guy comes up and says, hey, fighting man, it's time for you to get in the fight. Because if you're not in the fight, that means that, just because you're not fighting doesn't mean that the enemy's not. So if you're not fighting and he is, that means you're losing. You need to get back in the fight, and you need to fight with everything you got. You need to choose your battles wisely, my friend. So to be able to communicate that from a warrior perspective, from a military perspective, from even a Navy SEAL perspective, is going to be impacting, and I've found that to be the case, impacting. So when you see our website, it's going to be very SEAL-centric. You're going to see a lot, we have the SEAL ethos up there, because I believe every man has something to learn from what the SEAL leaders, the guys who wrote the ethos, and I know some of these guys, and they've written something that every man needs to read, because it will translate directly into your life. It's not just a code by which SEALs live. And quite frankly, not every SEAL lives by that code. I mean, we're guys too. We mess it up. We're going to mess stuff up. We just are. And I mean, there's an old saying in the teams, like, if you're going to give me some gear, give me 3 sets of it. I'm going to eat one. I'm going to use the other one, not for what it's intended, and I'm going to break it. And I might get around to using the third thing right, and it'll actually be a usable tool at that point. And it's kind of like that in their marriages. It's kind of like that in their parenting. It's kind of like, and so these guys do the best they can, but they struggle just like anybody else does. So they made this ethos to be able to speak to the warrior inside of the SEAL, because they are no different than any other guy out there fighting the things that they need to fight. They are fighting it out. They just have a little code, a little ethos that they can go to every once in a while and read it and check themselves against it. And that's what I'm doing with Life of Valor. I'm giving guys a gauge by which they can check themselves against, and it's not me. Do not check yourself against me. I am trying to figure it out just like anybody else, and only thing I know is I know the light switch is in the room, and I'm going to flip on the light switch during a conference, and you may not like what you see, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to strip myself down to the metal so you can see the mistakes I've made, the things I've done wrong, and that's where my credibility comes from. Not in the fact that that I have it all together, because I don't. My credibility comes in that I'm 43, but I'm 65 inside, and I have lived a lot in my 43 years. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm at the place where I'm finally doing things right. And it's getting across to these men, hey, look, there's something amazing for you, and I want you to be able to experience amazing as well.
Is that, now, you often talk about demonstrating the standard. What do you mean by, the standard and demonstrating the standard?
Demonstrating so it's kind of like if you have, you have people out there who are fairly pastoral. I'm not, I'm not pastoral at all. I have that title. I don't use it that often, because that P word scares people away. If I show up and introduce myself, hey, I'm Pastor Jeff.
People get nervous.
They're going to turn around. They're going to run the other direction. They're going to think I'm judging them. Well, that's not the case. Because I have that title because it was given to me, and it doesn't mean that I really have to use it. But a pastor, by definition, means that it's somebody who's going to get in it with you and demonstrate the standard. In other words, show you, not just tell you, but show you how to live. And they're going to be an example to you. Now, sometimes that's done through counseling, sometimes that's done through whatever, but usually you can look at your spiritual authority, your pastor, and say, you know what, I want to be where he's at. Well, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who is more along the lines of, I'm going to show you kind of the direction you need to go, and then I want you to plug into in your local area, because I travel around. I'm all over the place. I'm all over the country, speaking at a different church every weekend, speaking at a different men's meeting every weekend, or sometimes even midweek, and then I'm gone. So attaching yourself to me doesn't make sense, because I'm out of there. But I want guys to plug into their men's leader, their pastor, somebody that's in their life that can demonstrate the standard. Find a guy who's willing to call you on your junk and say, hey, how's it going with, when you're struggling with anger and lashing out? How's it going with your struggle with greed and selfishness? How's it going with your struggle in this area or that area? How's it going with that addiction? I know that you struggle with that alcoholism. How are you doing with that? Are you defeating it? Are you getting in and fighting that battle? So that is somebody who can say that to you, and at the same time, they figured out how to beat that demon, how to apply the Word of God to their life and be able to get to where they're supposed to be. That's the guy that I want to follow. A person who demonstrates the standard to me is this. This is a great analogy. If you have two soldiers standing in front of you, one of them has gear that looks like it has been through several battles. His ops corps helmet looks like it's been thrown down several flights of stairs with the nods on it. And, his boots look like he's been around for a while. His M4 is smoking hot. He's got some blood dripping off his knife. He's got a couple, holes punched in his body armor, but he's still standing there, and he's got a real cranky look on his face. You got a guy standing right next to him. He's got perfect gear. Looks like he just pulled it off the shelf, and he's got that square jaw. Looks like Mr. Incredible, and he's looking at you. And they're both saying, and the guy with all the perfect gear is like, hey, you need to do what I do because, hey, look at me. I'm perfect. Look at me. Then you got the other guy. He's just kind of looking at you, kind of got a little scowl on his face. Which guy are you going to want to follow into battle? I'll tell you what. I'm going to want to go with the guy that looks like he's battle proven. I'm going to go with the guy that has been on the battlefield and he's come back and he's lived to tell about it because I'm going to do what he does because obviously he knows what it means, what it takes to survive. He is demonstrating standard.
It's interesting that one of the things that you talk about, calling your buddy on those things, that's friendship. I think a lot of times people confuse, hey, we're going to tailgate together and, we're going to cook out and have some beers on Sunday with true friendship. That, a true friend is really going to call you on those things, not to be a dick, but because they care about you as their friend, because they have to rely on you just like you rely on them. That's why they're doing it. And a lot of people confuse that kind of friendship because most people don't, especially in the civilian world, don't have that kind of people around them that are willing to call them on those things because their lives or their careers or whatever it is, directly relate to it. That is a real definition of friendship that I think a lot of people have to get more familiar with and find more people like that. It's like you said, maybe it's time to stop having sex with that person. Maybe it's time to find some new friends or find some people around you in your community or your industry or whatever that will help you.
Right. Sometimes you have to, you are pretty much the sum total of who you hang out with.
So true.
You might want to pick some new friends. If the friends that you have are taking you down a dark road, maybe it's time for you it's time to just say no. Use an old adage, just say no, and time to and pick some new friends. Sometimes maybe you just got to put those friends just in, and sometimes it's just not answering the phone. Sometimes it's just not answering the door. Sometimes it's just not returning that email. It's definitely sometimes not returning that text message. And it's getting to that place where you start metering, hey, where am I at in my life? And then assessing the relationships that are in that life. Is this life the life that you want to live? Are you living someone else's life? Because I'll tell you what, there is no place lonelier than finishing someone else's race.
That's a great statement.
You could be running.
And people, I think one of the reasons that I said at the beginning that out with my buddy that as we get older, faith becomes more important and we get drawn back towards it is because of those lessons. You learn those lessons so often that you'd rather just do it right the first time, live right the first time, than have to deal with the emotional baggage of everything that you just went through. That if you just find the right people to work with or to be friends with, you're going to avoid that, quote, drama, unquote, that comes along with those types of people. But sometimes you have to have somebody else there to kind of point it out and make you say, okay, that's the standard of the person that I want to be around, and look at who I'm around right now. How do I get to where I'm around that person?
Yep, that's exactly right. And that boils down to the choices that we make, which, if you think about it, goes right back to character. You know, it's the place inside you, the things you say, the things you do, and the decisions you make come from. Sometimes you have to decide yourself out of relationship. You have to choose a different route. And sometimes it's hey, you know what, enough's enough. I am not doing this anymore. And I commit to not doing this anymore. Changing your mind. People sometimes forget, they think of the word repent. They think of, on your knees, and, that's great. That's, that probably is it. But if you look at the Hebrew word for repent, actually means to change your mind. So sometimes you need to repent for relationships that are there that don't need to be there. Okay, so, and to put it into very real and in-your-face type terms, this is, again, like I would say, in a men's environment, as I would say, so the neighbor lady that your wife doesn't know that you're seeing on the side, sometimes you need to change your mind towards that relationship, and it needs to come to a screeching halt. So that is the true sense of the word repent. It means to do something different than you have been doing before, because that is going to go down the road towards death of something. Something is going to die as a result of that sin. You may not get caught now, but your sin will find you out. It's in the Bible. Why do you think we have so many divorces? Why do you think we have so much alcoholism and things like that? It's because one thing may lead to another, to another, to another, to another. And before you know it, you're sitting at rock bottom, and you're on your back, and you're looking up this big tube towards where you were, and you're at the bottom of a well, and you're laying on just a hard surface, and you're just like, I don't know how to get out of here. I have no idea how to get out of here. And sometimes it's as simple as just saying, God, I just can't do this anymore. I've been doing it my way, and it is not working for me. What do I have to do to be able to get out of here? And a prayer like that, God always hears. Even though your sin separates you from God, when you cry out to God from your sin, He will hear you. And so sometimes it's changing your mind, changing your course of action, your trajectory, their direction, and everything will begin to adjust from there. You still may have some consequences to deal with as a result of where you came from, but it's not going to change a full direction. It's not going to change the direction towards greatness that God has for you.
You mentioned something earlier, and I wanted to bring us back to it for a moment. I oftentimes get emails from people that they say, "Oh, I love listening to the podcast when I'm in my car, driving my kids to school." And that's why I always tell guests when they come on, look, this is a PG environment. Remember that some people are driving their kids to school. So what do you talk to kids? Let's look at kids for a second, because that's one of the main things with Life of Valor is trying to, raise better boys and better girls. What do you talk to kids about on the ride to school?
When I'm taking my kids, like, say, for instance, this morning, so it's summer here, and we have the kids go to they have this YMCA day camp that they like to go to, and
it's summer all year where you're at.
Well, here it's summer every day, and so sometimes I forget that there actually are seasons in other places of the country. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it's summer everywhere, but here especially it's summer. So I was taking my kids this morning, and when I'm picking them up, I asked them, what is one thing that happened today that bothered you? Either you saw something, you heard something, you experienced something, somebody said something, somebody did something. What was it? And it usually takes them a minute. At first, when they first started understanding this, they'd have an answer right away. But as they kind of move through life, and listening to my responses to some of the stuff that bothers them, I think they're starting to look at the things that bother them, and they're starting to meter them and put it in a perspective of that's not that big of a deal. It's not something for me to get fired up about. But what my kids get fired up about is when they see a injustice done to somebody else. So we've spent a lot of our time lately talking about the whole bullying factor. And what do you do when you see somebody who's acting like a bully or being a bully, and whether it be to you or to because I have my 8 and 10-year-old, they're best friends. They play with each other at recess, even though they're in different classes. They wait for each other to get, and they are each other's best friends.
That's great.
It's so cool to see. So when they, we always have that discussion. I always do role playing with them. I say, okay, let's say that you have, and I put them in situations, and this will happen on our way to school because I want them to be in their mindset when they get into school. And I'm always preparing my children for the absolute worst situation that they could possibly encounter. It's like I talk to my kids about I run my kids through miniature active shooter classes about once a month.
Active bully.
Yeah, or I'll if there's okay. So one we talked about, and this is just recently, is what do you do? My oldest son, his name is Micah, and my 10-year-old son, his name is Samuel, and I say to Micah, what do you do if you see somebody over there and there's a couple kids and they're picking on Sam? And so now, because he's been through so much of stuff that he's like, are they putting hands on him, or are they just putting him down using words? I said, let's say that they're just putting him down using words. He goes, well, then I'll go over there and I'll stand between my brother and them, and I'll say, hey, the things that you're saying don't make any sense to me because they're not true. This is my brother, and if you want to get to him, you're going to have to come through me, and you're going to take us both on. And let's say you win. Great. Guess what? I will heal. That's the kind of stuff that they'll recite this stuff to me. And the way that they say things with such passion, and it's only happened once, but it absolutely worked. And my kids have never been sent to the office for fighting or anything like that, but I always tell them, okay, let's say that a kid is putting hands on your brother and they're beating him up. And he goes, oh, well, then I go over there and he's like, I'd probably go for the rear naked choke, put the hooks in. I would reach around, or I'd reach inside, I'd hook his left hand, I'd roll over on the right-hand side so they can't punch me, and my head would be on their left-hand side. I'd reach my hand around the backside of my neck, and then I would just cinch down until they take a nap. I'm like, good boy. Right on,
Nice.
And I said, now, if that happens, you're going to be sent to the principal's office. You know that, right, for fighting? They're like, yep. I said, now, when I'm going to come in there, and I'm going to say what happened. You might be in a little bit of trouble at first with me because I'm not going to exactly know what happened. But let's say that you were right, you did everything right, and you didn't start it, you just finished it, and in the process of finishing it, nobody got hurt. I said, that's good. I said, you may get kicked out of school for the day, but we're going to get ice cream. And so I walk them through situations and scenarios. Not every parent out there is going to agree with how I do things, whatever, but bottom line is I got great kids, and they are very respectful. You may not agree with me, but they will call you sir, and they will call you ma'am. And they will say yes, please, and no, thank you.
It always amazes me when people get offended when kids call them sir or ma'am. I've never, and maybe being Southern, it affects me more, but I've never understood when people get offended by that. What? Why are you calling me sir? Why are you calling me ma'am? I think that's part of the problem that we have out there is that people don't even view things as respectful anymore.
Yep, exactly. Well, the things that have been viewed as right are now viewed as wrong, and the things that are wrong are viewed as right. So our culture is beginning to reverse itself, And one of the things that my kids are up against, and everybody else's kids are up against, is the fact that they spend probably more time than they should on video games, on their Instagram, on their this or that or the other, and it's one of the things that over exciting your kid's mind with video games does is it's beginning to create a generation of young men that don't know how to relate to other people, much less young women. So now when they're in high school and college, and it comes time where they're interested in a girl, they're not going to know how to relate because they have their head stuck in Call of Duty all night instead of interacting with his brother and his sister and his mom and me, and and in, or outside playing with their friends and things like that.
It's like a generation of hermits.
Exactly. Generation of hermits. That's exactly what's happening. And that's why now, as they grow up into adolescence, and then they cross into that sexual exploration. Well, not that they're exploring sexually, but that's just when you're starting to determine who you are as a man. And that happens right around from 17 to probably 23, right in there somewhere. That when they get in that age group, it's called the pre-adulthood is like right in their low teens, but the pre-adulthood mindset actually stays with them all the way up into their 40s and sometimes their 50s. Right when they're in their prime years, they should be getting married. Well, they're still acting like they're 12, 13, 14 years old because they never matured but they were good at pressing X and 0 and square and 1 and 2 and blah, 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 and, killing the bad guy and making sure that, that they're winning Halo. Well, that doesn't do a whole lot with their interpersonal skills. And actually, that is also a gateway into things that are absolutely destructive inside of relationships and things like that. So I spend time with my kids. We actually go old school. So we have Monopoly. My kids love the new Monopoly game. For starters, it doesn't take 9 weeks to finish one Monopoly game.
There's a new Monopoly game?
Where they have a new one now. I mean, it's like, instead of buying like Park Place and Boardwalk and Pennsylvania Avenue, now you're buying like the X Games, and you're buying Nestle, and you're buying whatever, like the things that are out there now. You're buying Xbox, those, and the game literally, if it goes fast, the game will last like 15 minutes. If it goes long, it'll last an hour. That's it, and there's going to be a winner.
Interesting.
Real quick. It's awesome. So we've been playing Monopoly because it's teaching them how to make investment decisions. And I see that because now it's gone. My 12-year-old is starting to ask a lot of money questions and a lot of questions about investing and what's smart. And he hears me, complaining about banks and this stuff, and he's asking questions about that. And it comes from our time playing Monopoly, and then we play Clue a lot. So I'm really trying to work on their reasoning and trying to deduct and make a decision based on only what you know and what you don't know. So there's a new Clue game out there now it's awesome. It's the same.
They better have Colonel Mustard.
It's different. What's that?
There is a Colonel Mustard, correct?
There still is a Colonel Mustard.
Okay.
Yes.
That was always my favorite character, so I got to make sure that he's still in there. I'm going to have to boycott.
It's awesome. It's awesome to be able to do that. So what I would say to parents that have kids that are in their tween years and younger, and they're driving to school, is to talk to them about things that have substance and things that are going to cause their children to think, and place their kids in situations that they may or may not have been in, and see how they would respond, and give their kid a time to think through it, because when it happens for real, they may not have time to think. The schoolyard fight, like how are you going to take that apart so you're not hurting somebody, or somebody's not hurting you, or another kid at school. It doesn't have to be their brother. It can be some other kid who is constantly being picked on. I talk to my kids about, I tell them, if I ever find out that you're bullying and you're part of the problem, not the solution, we're going to have a hammer session when we get home. I'm not a spanker anymore. They're too big. They'll beat me up now probably. Now we have full on like Bud style, drop down, push them out, half push up position, hold what you got.
Nice.
And then I begin to talk to them about what they did wrong. A lie is 100 push-ups. The school called me. This was last year.
Wow.
The school called me. They did the presidential physical fitness test. And the teacher's like, well, so the average kid in the class is doing about 10 to 12 push-ups. Your kid did like 80 and then stopped. You might explain that? And they already asked, my son, like, why do you do so many push-ups? Oh, because when we get in trouble, Dad makes us do push-ups. And so they called me. I think they were going to be the kind of like the liberal mindseted teacher and say, you got, how is that building up your child? And by the time I got done explaining to my son's teacher why I do what I do, and I tell them, because I refuse to let my children grow up to be burdens on society, to be in the penal system. My children will grow up to be productive members of this of society, of this community. They are going to grow up to be respectful. They are going to respect authority. They are going to be honoring. They are going to be stand-up citizens. They're not going to do everything right, but everything that I have in me to teach them right is going to happen. And I will do it by any means necessary because they are worth it. And the teacher ended up saying, okay, well, hey, look at the time. Got to go. Bye.
Thanks for helping us win the Presidential Fitness Award. Got to go, Mr. Bramstedt.
Yep, exactly.
So at the end of every show, we always make sure at the end of every interview, we always do the plug. Is there anything you want to plug, websites, products, anything like that?
I would say come and check out our lifeofvalor.com website. We have conferences this year, and we'll be in Seattle, we'll be in Denver and Cleveland. We have Valor Youth going on in Alaska, in Anchorage, Alaska in January. And next year, we're going to be in all three of those cities again, plus an additional 3 cities, which is to be determined. I have an idea what they are, but I don't want to make any promises right now. And so I would go and check that out. If we're in a conference, if there's a conference near you, even if you have to fly to it, I would encourage every man and his son to go and be a part of it. At least go and read up on what the conference is. And if making a trip is too much, just wait for us to come near you. We'll get there. This is a movement. We're growing fast. And we want to be able to share with you the things that we've learned and show you that being a father that raises amazing, productive kids, you're never too late to step into that role. And I would encourage that. Come and check me out on Facebook. You can go to Life of Valor on Facebook or Jeff J. Bramstedt, either one of those. Come and say hi. And then get a battle rifle. You got to get a battle rifle. So, and, if you want some great tactical training, I would definitely go ahead and hit up Mr. Matthew Powell, because he is the heat. So
Thanks.
There's guys, and man, I want to connect you up too. I want to connect you up with Michael Rodriguez at Advanced Weapons and Training Tactics down in Houston, and then another buddy of mine in Dallas. His name is Jeff Kyle. He's actually Chris Kyle's brother, and he's got the Texas Elite Tactical Academy in Dallas. And when I come out to Atlanta, I'm going to have these guys with me, and I want you guys to really connect up because these guys have some great stuff that they're doing. And I always tell these guys, I'm like, as often as you can get around other people teaching what you're teaching, you're going to learn something from them that's going to make your course stronger. You're going to be able to pass stuff on to them that's going to make their course stronger. It's about networking. So, so Michael Rodriguez at AWAT. Matt, if you get a chance, go ahead and look that up. And then also Jeff Kyle at Texas Elite. And they're in Houston and Dallas, respectively, and they will be great contacts for you. I would love to connect you guys up. I think you guys have a lot to talk about. You guys have a lot of similar stuff that you teach, and to be able to kind of parlay those together, I think you guys could do some pretty great things. So.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to have you back very, very soon. Yeah,
we'd love to. Call me anytime. I'm here.
You say it's not my flying, it's my attitude. Gushing up a bust the tower if we're in the mood. My old man gave me a bad rap, so Charlie's giving me a hard time. Cougar lost his edge, he was holding on too tight. If we screw up just a little bit, before the cargo plans for the rubber dog shit out of our man. It's got to fly, I tell you, but you'd have to die. If we don't pull together soon, we'll get our name on the plaque in the ladies' room. Sliders, sticks, and jets to jet. I gotta know this running song stuck in my head in the bedroom.
Once again, I want to thank Bram for coming on. Great interview, great information, and make sure you go by his website, lifeofvalor.com. and check it out. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, if you believe in the flying spaghetti monster. Some stuff is universal. The principles are universal. And
one of those principles that he talked about is being the example. And I often say that you can see every teacher someone has had if you let them just teach for an hour. I say this so often because it's so true. Every interaction somebody has had with a teacher, you will see when you let them teach. Every good minute, every bad minute, or if they've messed up really bad, you will see them interact with others and just their general demeanor based on the way that they teach if you just give them an hour to do it. And it's one of those important things that we talk about in the CLM and conceptual learning method is that relationship between the teacher and the student and how that relationship develops. Because in the classroom, it's important to set the example, to be the standard when we're teaching. No matter if it's fitness or combatives or firearms, whatever it may be, you have to set the standard and be the example for the students. You have to understand what the learning types mean, and meet the student on their learning terms. They may be a kinesthetic learner, an auditory learner, a visual learner. It doesn't matter. When you set the example, you make sure that everybody around you knows that when you're dealing with other students and other people, that you go to them based off of their terms and what they're learning. Not expect them to come to your side of the fence. You cannot get somebody that's an auditory learner to become a kinesthetic learner in one class by talking to them, if ever. You also have to have patience. And, this is something that we've talked about in previous podcasts. That, is the student in the right class? How are they interacting with others? What is your relationship to that student? Those are very important key points for setting that example, because it makes sure that you set the optimum training environment for the student to continue to learn. A lot of times in the martial arts, I was going to post a video, and a lot of times in the martial arts, we see these teachers that beat up students really bad, and they act irresponsibly. I didn't do it because the video made things look, it was the voiceovers that made it rather irresponsible. But we've all been to those schools where the teacher is showboating and demonstrating a little too much and not instructing and being humble enough. And you got to know the learning methods. You have to know if the student's in the right class, if they have the personality for it, how they're interacting with people. It's the difference between being a teacher and being an instructor. Like I always say, the instructor's there, he's punching the card, getting paid for the hour, he's out, but a teacher is there to work with the students and to guide them. And knowing why they're there is important, because you may have a student that's there for sport. When you're teaching combatives, you may be teaching sport and they're there for health. And it just ruins the learning environment. You have to be able to know why they're there, which is why you have to communicate with the student a lot and talk to them a lot so you get an idea of what you're dealing with. And this not only applies to teachers looking at students, it also applies to the student showing up to the school. If you're a student showing up to the school, you need to know how you learn best and work towards that. And make sure the way that you address the lesson in front of you is the way that you learn best. You need to make sure you're in the right class. You want to make sure that you're interacting with others, and if they're the type of people that you can't work with or you don't feel comfortable with, don't be afraid to ask for another training partner. Talk to the instructor off to the side, or just leave the class in general, which is why you never sign a long-term contract without going through a few classes if you're going to a martial arts school. And you also need to know why you're there. You don't need to go to the reality-based self-defense class if you're there for sport and to get in shape. You might want to be over the cardio kickboxing class, but remember why you're there, the things that you want to accomplish. Training is about you. That's the most important thing. It's about you. But there's another level of setting the standard, and it's about how you view yourself. Do you view yourself as a teacher or an instructor? And it's one of the things that we talk about in the CLM. Manual 3 is the difference between the two. A teacher is there as a conduit of knowledge. They're there based off of their experience to teach the class. Their experience, even though other people in the class may be more experienced in other things, for that class, what the teacher is teaching, the students are there due to their experience and their knowledge. So you have to view yourself as that conduit of knowledge and be willing to share openly with your students and your colleagues and other people so that not only do they view you as that, But the more you are viewed as that, you will view yourself as that. The more questions that are asked of you, the more you will understand your place as a teacher and a conduit of knowledge. It's one of the things that makes Bram so effective is his experience. He might not experience the same thing as you right now, but his experiences that he's had, he can apply those principles to your experience and help you through them. We also have to remember, especially in the martial art world, that we are there to help the student with their most immediate need, which is the need to survive. A lot of times I see people and they forget that lesson when it comes to martial art, when it comes to fitness. People focus, like Sarah Jameson said, so much on the patterns, but they don't look at the parts. We have to remember that we are there to serve a particular purpose for educating that student. And you as a student have to look at the person that's teaching or instructing you and see if they are looking at your experiences, your level, and make sure that they are talking to you where you are at and the things that you are having problems with. Another thing that we have to make sure that we're very cognizant of is to not always be right or to win, but always be correct and teach a lesson. I often see martial art instructors and they go over and above to make sure they beat every one of their students. But the student doesn't learn a lesson in that other than humility and, hey, my teacher's pretty good. Or they always want to be right, and anyone that says anything else, they have to be right. It doesn't matter if they're correct, they're just right. You see, right is based off of experience, but correct is based off of something that is measurable. We have to ask those questions. Does it work? If it's effective, then we want to make sure that we study what was effective about it. But if it doesn't work, then don't do it. Don't repeat that pattern. Don't keep that neurological pathway open and develop it further. Make sure that it works first. Once we determine if it works, then we have to ask, is it efficient? Can it be explained using science? Or previous experiences that it's worked numerous times? Or measured by breathing or heart rate? Because it's not enough to be effective. It also has to be efficient so it can be done repeatedly, and that people can continue to do it and explain it so that whatever that is, it's continually given to others in an easily explainable method instead of some type of secret. And the last question that we have to ask is, does it work for them? Can they do what we're trying to teach them do in shooting or combatives, martial art, health and fitness, whatever it may be? Does it work with the natural gifts that they're given? You know, God gives us all a lot of gifts, and we each have certain things about our physique or our mind, our mentality, whatever it may be, that are given by our higher power so that we can succeed and we can do the things to enjoy our lives and to make sure that we have the best chance to keep living a long life based off of those natural gifts and those natural traits, so our genetics keep going. We have to look at that in ourselves. We have to look at that in our teachers. We have to look at that in our students and ask ourselves, does it work for that person? Not for 10, but for 1. When you start to look at it that way, you leave the instructor mentality of, I'm going to teach 10 people, make this much money, punch the clock, and get out. And you start to look at it as a teacher that says, I'm going to teach 10 people, but I'm going to focus on the problems that each one of them have and see how I can take those natural gifts or their experiences or their abilities and bring those up to make up for the deficits they may have in making something effective and making something efficient. When you do that, you move beyond the instructor. You move beyond being a student. And you start to become a teacher, not only of others, but yourself. I want to thank you once again for tuning in to Pramek Radio. We got a great episode coming up next week with a special guest. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but a lot of you know him, a lot of you love him, and he's a great teacher, an innovator, and most of all, he's a good friend of mine and a listener. I'm Matt Powell. Make sure that you conquer yourself, be effective, but make sure that what you're doing is efficient. Have a good week. I'm signing off.